Hello, everyone, and welcome to the month ahead. April is probably by far one of the most astrologically significant months of this year. Not to say that there aren't other big transits, throughout the course of the year, but we are in between the eclipse season, and we also have the main Jupiter conjunction to Uranus happening this month, in addition to some very core planetary shifts. So I'll start by just sharing with you where we begin, and we'll go through the whole month together. A big part of the theme of this month starts with Mercury stationing retrograde. Now, every Mercury retrograde cycle is a 3-week cycle, but I always think of them as beginning actually 3 weeks before, when Mercury is in what we would call the shadow of its retrograde, or passing through the degrees of its retrograde cycle. And then it got to 27 degrees Aries and station retrograde today. And it will make a journey all the way back. And during this month, that will include making conjunctions to Chiron, which, it did the direct conjunction to the North Node to Chiron, in the last couple of weeks. But the retrograde conjunction or the retrograde cycle, right, is the intensification or the acceleration of that soul function of Mercury. And where's Mercury? In the sign of Aries. So it's, of course, an initiation, right? And it's initiated something for us relative to the North Node and Chiron, right? That initiation has already been underway, and it's initiating something collectively as it relates to Mars, and Mars is in Pisces. And if we track the journey of, Mars right now, Mars is in the sign of Pisces, moving towards a conjunction with Saturn. Mars is the ruler of the North Node, and the ruler of that Chiron and the Sun right now. And this Mars in Pisces is a very kind of tricky energy, because it's not necessarily a place where Mars functions, right? Mars in Aries correlates to a soul that is desiring to break free. This is according to Jeffrey Wolf Green, from all kinds of patterns, right? And that desire is all about freedom. And so we know Mars is moving towards that freedom, but Mars in Pisces correlates to a soul that desires to penetrate and energize all of the desires which have been held in the unconscious state. In evolutionary terms, that is the desire to bring a culmination to an entire cycle of evolutionary development, right? So we generally, before we're able to break free from anything that ails us, any difficulty, anything where we're suffering in our life, right? We have to ultimately undergo an excavation process where we're unearthing the subconscious content, the desires, the actions, the will that from the past that has motivated us to be in the position that we are today, right? Everything you experience today is the culmination of all this past energy in the present moment, right? We don't necessarily experience it as such all the time, but it's, it's pretty self-evident that the karmas of our past choices are all accumulating, to the things that we are here working on today. We don't have a lot of money in our account because we've been in a karma of overspending or under earning for the past year, right? That struggle, that suffering is an accumulation of that past karma. Maybe that also came from a past karma of feeling sense of unworthiness or past conditioning around, maybe our parents said to us that money is the root of all evil, or maybe, whatever the culmination of circumstances that ultimately led to the situation, the condition of the present moment. This particular phase of the cycle is about a culmination of real understanding. It's coming to understand the meaning that we've made of our lives. If we had parents who divorced and who struggled financially, who fought over money, it's like that conditioning in our mind around relationships, meaning volatility and financial volatility and uncertainty, and there being all this suffering around money, and money being a central piece of that suffering, or the relationship between mother and father being a central piece of suffering, right? And it's setting up the condition in our minds to believe that relationships are suffering, that what we get in relationship is a lot of hard work and a lot of struggle and a lot of suffering, right? So these unconscious meanings and the desires that we have, which do ultimately kind of emanate from the unconscious, right? It's like where you naturally gravitate towards something or someone, or even where we're naturally repelled or offended by something or someone, right, can point us quite a lot in the direction of where our unconscious motivations are coming from, where we can see the threads and the patterns of things in our life which have carried through time, addictions or struggles, like if we struggle with addiction, addiction is one of those things where unfortunately the mechanism of addiction easily will find its way to replacing an addiction with another addiction. So you can replace an addiction for alcohol to an addiction with tobacco. You can replace the addiction with tobacco to an addiction with sugar. You can replace an addiction with sugar to an addiction with sex. You can replace the addiction to sex with an addiction to shopping. You can replace the addiction to shopping with an addiction to Netflix. You can replace, and I could go on and on with all the different substitutes for our connection to ourselves, to the divine, which can ultimately take the place of filling that feeling, right? And Pisces is that existential void. And while on one hand, that void is the source of all creation, is infinite, is cosmic, and can really be an incredible source of inspiration when we're connected to it, when we're connected to that inspiration. It can also be the source of our suffering or the source of our sense of existential crisis. And the crisis with this Mercury retrograde, or that I wouldn't say it's a crisis necessarily, although the crisis points may arise as we're in eclipse season, the critical mass where we recognize like, oh, that is me trying to be something that I'm not, or oh, that is me operating in a condition that no longer serves the calling of my soul. And I feel the discomfort of doing that because I can't unconsciously follow a particular belief system or idea, a particular feeling or a way of living, a particular relationship dynamic or pattern, which ultimately is of our own creation, right? The extent to which we might want to blame or deflect responsibility externally, right? But when at the end of the day, the only one that we are ever with always in all ways is ourselves, right? And Aries has to do with that self and the I am self, the I am self initiating. So as Mars is heading through this Pisces time, our personal meaning, our personal will, and our personal desires are being unearthed from this deeper unconscious place. And we have Venus moving through a conjunction to Neptune, right? The Neptune being the higher mind, the higher love, right? This can be also the deepest place of unconditional love. But unconditional love can't be gotten to by bypassing our human suffering, our human reality, our human desires, or even I would say unconditional love can't be achieved by ignoring our unconscious inner truth. And as we come to face that, truth, what we make meaning of, what stories are associated in our own lives, what relationships from the past that have set up that truth to be a way that we've felt about our particular story thus far in our lives, we can think that we're sort of accelerating the story to completion, right? The moon is in a balsamic phase in this time. It's in its closing cycle. And in the first part of the month, basically, we're going to go through a conjunction to Pluto moon and Aquarius moon is going to bring up that deeper unconscious content relative to what we need to do in order to liberate ourselves from, right? And that is ultimately where that Mars is going, towards that freedom, towards that liberation. That's also where Jupiter is going. That's also, with a Jupiter-Uranus liberation. And as the moon comes through here, the moon is going to square Jupiter and Uranus. And I think the moon is so important. One of the reasons why I speak to the moon every single week on the week of the head is because the moon moves the fastest of any planet. And she's moving through the sky every 2.5 days. She's moving through a sign. She's moving through conjunctions every 28 days, making her joinings with everyone, right? And as she makes her joinings with everyone, I feel like the moon is like picking up that energy as she comes together, as she moves into the sign of Pisces and she comes together with Mars. She's picking up a little information from Mars. What do we need to cry about? What do we need to feel unconsciously? What deep desires for, touch, affection, connection, right? What and especially then as Venus moves into Mars's sign, right? Venus, I would say, Venus is secondarily to the moon, the one coming around and picking up feelings, but she doesn't move at quite as quickly as the moon. Then the moon comes through Saturn and then through Neptune, right? Picking up what are these pieces of our experience and our sort of existential crisis that these unresolved dynamics from the past, especially places where we've been angered, where we've been hurt, where we've been limited, but where we've been struggling with some form of suffering that seems to be related to an external cause, right? It seems to be because of this relationship. It seems to be because of this person in my life. It seems to be because of this limitation. It seems to be because of this physical pain. It seems to be because of this way of thinking. It seems to be because of what I've had to endure, that I am the way that I am, that I have the life that I have, right? When we look at the culmination of circumstances that is building to our life experience, right? It seems to be because of what's out there that I'm having this experience in here. And what this Mercury retrograde can do for us if we take this opportunity is we can really do the excavation of like, what is the thing that's in here? What is the thing that seems to be in here that is creating the thing out there? What is the deeper thing in here that is creating the thing out there? What is the thing in here that I actually get to? The wound, the hurt, the betrayal, the fear, the anger, the root cause that drives the desire that I have, right? To seek for, to create, to experience something in the world that I have yet to experience, right? all of these energies of liberation are moving us towards the unknown. I haven't experienced this yet. I want it so badly. It's driving me, but it's also creating this deep internal suffering that I'm also having to overcome. And if we feel like we're overcoming obstacle after obstacle after obstacle the last several years, like, welcome to good company, but I think a part of what this eclipse season is doing for us is accelerating the resolution of that conflict. And that conflict is inherently an internal conflict, right? It is an inner conflict because the courage in our soul to experience the new, to do the new, to embark, to liberate ourselves from desires, which might, they might be hard to see in particular, because we might have created a reality with our own story, with our own ideas about our life, maybe a reality that nobody else understands, maybe a reality that is inherently internal and there's a lot of suffering in it. But what if we had a deeper desire for a different reality? Right? What if we could no longer take the stance of being victimized by our external experience? What if that wasn't a choice, right? Virgo Pisces, I always think of as the victim perpetrator axis. And, over the weekend, we celebrated Easter Sunday, which, is big holiday in Christianity, celebrating the resurrection of Jesus, right? But he was persecuted, he was killed, and then everyone was kind of disillusioned. Like, here's this Messiah who is supposed to come and save us all, right? It's a very Virgo Pisces story. He was completely rejected by his own people in many ways, not able to fulfill this mission that he had on earth. And then he dies. And then it leaves people in these two camps, like those who are believers and those who are non-believers, right? Right. And then the square to that axis is this Gemini Sag, right? Do you identify with that dogma or the belief system, or do you have, do you see this more as a story? Is it, and whatever your belief system, it doesn't, like, for some people, it's deeply liberating. The belief in Jesus is like one of the most redeeming qualities in their life. It has a transformative effect. That is a Neptune. That is a Neptune power. And for others, it's actually deeply alienating. It becomes a way in which we see our life as war against an other, right? Which is that's a very scary ideology to become entangled in, because then it bypasses the primary root of what Jesus was trying to teach, right? And so the whole function too of the Aries axis is like this axis of Mars, and then the Virgo Pisces axis relates to purity and impurity, being cleansed, being renewed, the soul being renewed. And a part of what happens for us when we are able to cleanse ourselves of unconscious beliefs that have been undermining our ability to feel held by life, unconscious beliefs that have been positioning us in a position of being a victim in our own life circumstances. When we liberate from that, rather than try to escape from that, right? We're trying to escape from our reality. Let me numb myself so that I don't have to feel the pain of being in my life circumstances. Let me, escape from my reality, because to have to face this conflict might mean the loss of something that I'm unwilling to acknowledge or face the grief of, right? We have to ultimately enter into a process within ourselves where we are dissolving the barriers that seem to separate us from those unconscious beliefs, dissolving the limitations, right? Mars moving through Saturn. And here we have this eclipse, which is forming on Sunday and then perfecting on Monday. And it perfects at 19 degrees Aries. It's a new moon on the North Node. It's a total eclipse. It will be visible in many parts of the world, and particularly in the United States. And this eclipse holds this Aries power, but it's also during a Mercury retrograde. So the intensification of what the soul is trying to initiate here on the North Node in terms of really trying to create evolution through spirit becoming connected through our flesh, right? Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about this, right? It is that divine transcendence. If we were to do this in terms of sexual experience, this is like the initiation of sacred sexuality, but the profane sexuality is not much different, right? It is the determinant factor is whether we are using the act of creation, procreation, for connection with the divine, for creation with the divine, or whether we are using it for lust, for self-seeking purposes, for, distraction. And we can feel in this time in particular a sense of anger within our own lives pointing us to where these unconscious patterns are being released. I was recently with some friends, and there's patterns around addiction, and a part of what I recognized in witnessing this was like how ungrounding it feels, the addictive pattern. It's like one doesn't really know whether it's safe or not safe, right? And that can bring up this younger part of self, which is victimized maybe by adults who were not really safe when they should be safe, right? This can be especially difficult for folks when raised in a families of alcoholics, or in that kind of family pattern of codependency, those dynamics. There can be a sense that we either participate in those same dynamics ourselves, and then we suffer in the familiarity of our own trauma being reenacted through our own choices. But it can no longer be blamed on our parents who were that way if we as adults are behaving that way. And then it can also be that just these unhealed parts of us, even if we've consciously chosen, okay, my motivations around this is really this seeking towards this relief from what I'm feeling. So I'm consciously pushing myself in the direction of feeling what I need to feel. It doesn't necessarily make it any easier as we're really feeling the discomfort of those wounds, of those places from the past, and of the motivations that we've then established, right? To become one with something that is bigger than ourselves, is larger than ourselves, right? That is a part of what, that divine connection can be in our lives. It can be a sense of being one with something so much greater and being carried by a higher power. And at the same time, we might be, we might be feeling like we're being dragged through the mud, so to speak, in this last phase of the eclipse season, because in particular, these are cycles that are closing out with the North Node that have been going on for the last, 20 years or more, right? Eclipse cycles go 19 years. Saturn cycles are, 20, 29 years or so. Neptune cycles longer than that. Jupiter cycles are 12 years. Uranus cycles are 84 years, right? So when we're looking at cycles, Venus cycles are 18 months, Mars cycles are 2.5 years. But in particular, with these eclipse cycles, Mars, Saturn, all moving towards the North Node, Venus moving towards the North Node. These are balsamic phases to the North Node. I'll just read for you about the disseminating phase because I think it's a really important thing. The balsamic phase, I'm sorry. The 320-degree aspect is an interesting place. The moon passes through that 323-degree aspect. The seeds of new evolutionary cycle begin in an active gestation process, right? So we can have something is coming, and there may be an attempt to retreat into the past as these thoughts now threaten the existing reality, right? As we go into the past and we are faced with those evolutionary, like the content of our lives that hasn't been working for some time now. But then we get to the semi-sextile. The new evolutionary cycle has become clear in the form of conceptions and ideas that we might attempt to establish in life. The new phase is now rapidly dissolving. Individuals may experience a sense of meaninglessness and emptiness that will diffuse or undefined personal identity. Now, see, the Aries North Node, that is so much the I am what I am, I know what I am, I know where I'm going, I have a direction, I have purpose. And then wait a second here, in the midst of being in the dark, in the midst of being in this closure of my life cycle, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I believe. I don't know what I believe about life. Do I believe in true love? Do I believe in in Jesus? Do I believe? What do I believe, right? And our beliefs, and in particular, not just our beliefs, because Sagittarius is more the beliefs, but our sense of meaning and purpose, right? I would say Pisces is meaning, Aries is purpose. We take meaning. If we take meaning that our lives are a creative source of inspiration in the world, that we were created to be divine creators, that that's what we're here to do, that there's no mistake that you can ever make, no wrong direction, no, I'm on my soul's path or I'm not, right? You can definitely be suffering or not suffering, right? You can definitely be struggling with the conditions of your life. We can definitely feel victimized or caught in past, patterns which seek so badly to liberate ourselves from them, right? Those past patterns require our evolution. And a part of when people say, surrender, right? The surrender process, that's really dissolving oneself into that meaninglessness. Oh, letting myself lose the thing I'm afraid of losing before I've lost it. Ari Moshe has this song, Die Before You Die, Let Go, and he often says, let go to receive, which I'm always like, oh, that's so hard. I don't want to let go to receive, but if you think about it, you can't really get much with a closed fist. You have to have an open palm in order to receive. And part of what these eclipses can bring up for us as the North Node, right? New beginning, new moon, right? But it's a new moon relative to our collective past. And when we get to the conjunction, it says the evolutionary cycle has been completed. Any two planets found within this condition is completing or has completed a complete evolutionary cycle. A total new cycle is about to begin. What's completing here? Well, we've got Venus moving towards completion. We've got Chiron in completion. We've got Mercury in completion. The personal planets are our completing factors. They have all made the choice to give themselves to the North Node, to surrender as Mars surrenders to Saturn, right? Mars in Pisces and Saturn in Pisces, right, come together and dissolve into this real understanding of where our suffering, where the roots of our suffering come from. And in that dissolving, in that surrender, we can actually, we can choose consciously to give meaning to what is happening in our life. That meaning and direction and purpose will be directly related to the way that we're thinking about our will, our life voice, our choice, our desires, our relationship to the masculine, to external authorities, a relationship to our own power and strength and source, right? And our relationship to what we're here to create, what we're here to initiate in our lives. So this first, 10 days of the month is solidly, strong work. And then we have the Mercury Sun conjunction, which comes together. Oh, I might have to make this just the week ahead and record the month ahead another time. That would be a total Mercury retrograde funny. Okay, guys, I just realized I'm almost out of time for my day today. And so I will do that. Instead of this being the month ahead, this will be the week ahead. We will come back another time for the month ahead. I look forward to bringing you that special. But the card that I chose for this, which is pretty spot on for what I was just talking about for this week. This is from the Animal Apothecaries deck by Kara Elizabeth. She's pretty awesome, and she's on YouTube. I love her. See Beyond the Past. It's the Black Swan. The fable of the ugly duckling tells of a baby swan that is nestled within baby ducks. All of the ducks made fun of the little swan for how different they looked, made them feeling inherently not good enough. Little Swan compared themselves to what the duck should look like rather than its own true nature, its own true self, the sun. Sadly, this little swan began to assume the identity of the ugly duckling. Like, can you imagine? You're born, people start telling you who you are, what you're here to do. Then you start believing that. Then you are, oh, I'm an ugly duckling. This is what happened to the Black Swan. Despite how gorgeous Black Swan became, they suffered from severe shame and feelings of unworthiness. They could not see the glorious truth of themselves. They became crippled by the delusion that something was wrong, right? That can be the Pisces delusion too. Something's wrong. I'm not wrong. I'm unworthy. The way that I am is not the way that I should be in the world. The ugly duckling was utterly unaware of their captivating beauty and could neither honor themselves nor the gift the great mystery bestowed upon them. They became obsessed with outside validation. That's the Saturn thing. Comparing themselves to other winged creatures. Look at me. I'm not as good as that white swan. Look at me. I'm not as good as that other duck. Look at me. When you were never not good enough. You were never not beautiful and intrinsically like created by the divine. Like, and look at that red moon. It's like the eclipse. See beyond the past. Whenever you feel small, it is not a reality. It is actually old story and programming that has brainwashed you. Please wake up from the illusion and honor the Great Spirit and what it has gifted you, the gift of yourself. You are your own rare miracle. Rare miracle. You know you are a miracle. The fact of the matter is that there is no other physiological, biological DNA combination that made you as a soul with your particular natal chart, with your particular life. You know, that's the thing about Chiron, is it's through that mistaking our rejectedness, our woundedness, our brokenness that we find our medicine and recognize the truth of who we are, right? If that's all you're doing this week is dissolving these old stories and seeing beyond the past where it's like you were rejected and wounded and hurt and broken, where you have been suffering, where you've been struggling, if that's all you're doing this week, man, you're doing the good work. So I hope this message has served you and your soul. I love you all so much. I appreciate all your comments, everything that you share with me. It means so much to me. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this. Every week I make a week ahead, every month I make a month ahead, and I'm often doing free classes once a quarter and special master classes and teaching. My current class series right now is The Goddess Within. We will be tuning in to another goddess this month. In that series, you can still join me for that series if you're interested in learning about the asteroid goddesses. We're going through the major asteroid goddesses and their transits for the year. And I always practice with live charts, real people, and yeah. So love you all so much. Have a blessed eclipse time. Liberate from those unconscious desires, and I will see you on the month ahead. Bye for now.